No, it's just, hey, these guys are really good at basketball, and that's all they do.
And Kyrie was, I'm done. No, I'm done with Kyrie.
But damn it, I need more GB art clothes.
Yo, what is going on? Welcome back out to the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. You are on Cavs Encapsulated, episode 7. We're glad you're here. We're glad you're a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and we're glad to be with you all season long. This is the 7th week in a row that we've done this. I'm Jeff. To the left of me is Justin, and below is Logan. So another 4-game road trip. Or not road trip, but, some games on the road, some games intermittently. Yeah. But since the last time that we talked, 4 games, we did a whole live stream reaction post-Heat game. So we're not going to go into great detail about that. I'll link that video up in the eye in the top right, throw in the description. You guys could go check that out. That was fun. That was high energy. Maybe some news about doing that this week as well, if we could all get on the same schedule. Yeah. But we're just going to start. We're just going to get into it. I know you guys are doing great. Logan's a little bit under the weather, but we're not here for the pleasantries. We're here for Cavs basketball. Justin, let's talk about it wasn't even 4 full quarters, because against the Wizards, a 116-101 victory. We didn't even need to play four full quarters because the first 3 quarters were just so dominant.
Yeah, we scored 30-plus points in each one of those first 3 quarters and held them to 17 points in that second quarter. It was just, I was really happy with Kyle Kuzma just really trying to pick a fight with the city of Cleveland. And then, they barely beat us in the game that they won. And then we come back and we smack them around a little bit. He has a pretty poor game, in my opinion. And Jared Allen and Darius Garland just – 2 all-stars, I think. Just Garland having one of his best nights ever, 32 of 10. Really just a fun game to watch. He was getting it whatever way he wanted. And it's just so consistent to watch the Darius Garland to Jared Allen alley-oop. It's so fun.
And I kind of got ahead of ourselves here. I mean, I'm so excited to talk Cavs basketball. We were 2-2 on the 4 games since we last talked. We beat the Heat. We beat the Wizards. In convincing wins. We lost to the Jazz 109-108. And then last night we lost to the defending champions on a back-to-back 112-104. Before I throw it over to Logan, I know he has some great points that he prefaced in our group text. But what I like, Justin, I'm glad you brought it up. The first Wizards game, Kuzma has a blowout game against us. And Montrezl Harrell plays great against us in the first game. The Cavs took it personally. They said, we're going to make sure that these 2 guys don't do that again. Kyle Kuzma has his worst plus-minus, tied his worst plus-minus in his career. And we totally dominate the Wizards. So that's what I like to see in a small sample size. We played the Wizards recently before that game. But that's good growth that we're not letting, Kuzma burn us 2 times in the same 30-day span. But Logan, I know that you want to talk about maybe all the games as a whole in some analysis. So I'm excited to hear about that.
Yeah, before we jump into just talking about the Wizards game, the Jazz game, the Bucks game, and, I don't know if we'll touch on the Heat game anymore than we already have, but overall in these last 4 games, what I wanted to say is I saw a lot of great and a lot of good. I don't think in these last 4 games I saw anything truly, truly bad. Yes, there was missed shots. There absolutely was. We had a couple of stints where we looked like we weren't getting back on defense, and yeah, that could be considered bad. But I hate when people on Twitter will say something like, the Cavaliers are cold, they're playing bad. Sometimes shots just don't go down. But how often did we see that ball hop all around the court? We had open looks, and the shots just didn't fall. In my opinion, that's still good basketball. In my opinion, even in a 8-point loss or a 1-point loss, that's still good basketball, like we had to the Bucks and the Jazz respectively with those margins of loss. I think overall in the last 4 games, we saw once again just how gritty this Cavaliers team is, how they will not quit. You can have them down 15 in the 4th quarter and they come right back at you. You can have them down 10 points in the 4th quarter and they come right back at you. Like we said, that annoying little mosquito that won't go away on a hot summer's day, that's the Cleveland Cavaliers. And to me, teams are starting to respect us. Teams are starting to prep for us just like the Bucks did. last night in Milwaukee.
Yeah, it's a great point about the prep. I believe last night, on the 25th game of this young 2021-2022 NBA season, it felt like I was consciously watching a team defend us with intentionality. It seems like when we play these teams, as you saw in the Wizards game that we played this week, we might not go as structured as we usually do, talking about individual games, might be more of a hodgepodge. We have a special guest joining us here shortly, which is going to be fun and interesting. But what was I talking about? Oh, the defense. The defense being structured in the sense where you see us play the Wizards and they're just out there running around on the defensive side of the ball. They really don't have too many big assignments. Bradley Beal is not too interested in playing a whole lot of defense. But last night, the Bucks, another one of those teams where we play, some games against the Nets earlier in the year, and it's pretty much consensus that the Cavs don't get burned by, you'd expect Harden and Durant to put up, 60, 65 points on us, but we're lamenting about Patty Mills and LaMarcus Aldridge post game. It was one of those instances last night where Drew Holiday really does make that team go. That's the best single performance I've seen defending Darius Garland all year long. And I want to talk to Justin about that, on how you felt. Was it a size thing, or was just Darius not used to that physicality from a opposing point guard?
I'll take it back to when I used to be really, really into basketball, and not just the Cavs. Tony Allen on a Kevin Durant used to be one of the most pesky matchups for an individual player that I had seen in a very long time. And this is exactly what it was with Drew Holiday and Darius Garland. Obviously, Garland dropping 30 back-to-back points before this game. Just an incredible, showing of offensive prowess those past two games. And he comes into this game and Drew Holiday's on him like no other. Really couldn't get any separation. And as much as it was Garland just lacking a little bit of separation, this whole team offensively just couldn't get things to go their way in that first half, those first three quarters. We like to see, a lot of the times when we're playing down on teams, our third quarter, like the last, half of that third quarter, we like to turn it on a bit. But it was just a struggle offensively for us to get going, and especially Garland last night. I don't really know what to put on that, because I think it was just the perfect storm for the Cavs in terms of what was going wrong for them. And honestly, a 104-112 loss against the reigning champs, I'll take it. And obviously a rough game to go back-to-back on. They played the Jazz right before this and had to go right into playing Milwaukee. So a tough game for sure.
And I can add on to that, Darius Garland struggles against Milwaukee. I think this season, the toughest player that he's had to play. I'm not talking about an offensive mind like Steph Curry that he's had to play, so far this season. I'm talking about a defensive dynamo like Drew Holiday, who frustrates everybody. That was a good test for Darius Garland, and he may have not passed today or last night. But, before that, it's 6 games leading into that one. Garland was averaging 24 points, 8 assists, 4 rebounds on 50-50-90 splits. I mean, he was absolutely dominating. I think a game like that, where you face a hard-nosed veteran defender who doesn't humble you per se, but he does make you think a little bit more and having to switch up your game a little bit. I think that can only be healthy for a player like Darius Garland, especially him still being young in his career. Clearly, he's starting to find his own in this NBA. I think playing and learning from a game like that, and at the end of the day, Garland still had 9 assists. He was still trying to find ways to affect the game in different ways, because Drew Holiday was doing such a good job at, like you said, Garland's offense is very much based on his space, the way he's able to dribble around, get away from his defender, break you down, take it inside, kick it out, maybe step back, shoot. Holiday was all over him. And I think that's only good for Darius Garland. And, maybe he learns from that and gets right back on one of those good streaks he had.
Yeah, before Jeff, before I cut you off,
go ahead.
I am already cutting you off. Going back to, since we're not being very structured about it, you could see it in that last shot in that Utah Jazz game, where he doesn't get the space that he wanted on that first shot. You could all tell that he was trying to get to that block, to that turnaround jumper that he had going for him all day against the Jazz, and unfortunately, he had to take probably the longest three of what wasn't like a I don't know, at the end of the second quarter, buzzer beater, half court kind of shot. And unfortunately that doesn't go, but his game has, I think, significantly improved just offensively. And before that game yesterday, I wanted to have the conversation, is Darius Garland working himself into being an elite scorer, which I didn't think he was coming into this season. I thought he was a good scorer and he could get his buckets sometimes, but what I had seen in the Jazz game and in the Wizards game was just out of this world, and something that I thought would continue as long as, we were winning. So,
hey Jeff, you're gonna hate me. I'm sorry. I really would like you to talk, but I think
You're good. You're good. I love it. I'm doing something in the background, so you're fine.
All right, perfect. I think we just put a Darius Garland segment in here and let it rip. I don't know what you guys
That's the plan.
I don't know what you guys think about this, because I mentioned that Garland is starting to come into his own, become his own player. My comparison for Darius Garland last year, before we saw more of what's in his bag, I want to get your thoughts on this, guys. Offensively, people might come at me in the comments. I don't know. We'll see. He reminds me of a quicker Chauncey Billups. What do you guys think of that comparison? And who do you think Garland kind of stacks up to in the NBA? Because I don't really know who to pinpoint him on, to be honest. He has such an interesting game that is a good, healthy mix of the old and the new when it comes to him. I don't know. You guys tell me.
Jeff, you want to take this one real quick?
Man,
I got one in mind, but I don't want to. You haven't talked in a minute, so
it's so tough. It's very difficult to pinpoint it, just because he is so young. When he's not scoring the ball efficiently, though, he does remind me of some of the greater point guards who were similar to his size, of course. He's not, I don't know if he'll ever be as good as, some of those guys like Chauncey Billups, if he'll ever be as good as Chris Paul. But when he plays in that middle level where he's basically holding his dribble, trying to make up his mind if it's going to be a floater or a lob, I mean, that just reminds me of, even I was going to say vintage Chris Paul, but Chris Paul still does that on a nightly basis. So it's one of those things where he just has so many options for where he is on the basketball court. It does get a little streamlined. I think we've seen this in the past, where if he's not out there or if he's shut down like last night, it gets a little bit of a mess. The offense is stagnant. It looks bad at points. Sometimes I can't admit, I'm not going to beat around the bush there, but I'm going to keep hammering it home before I let Justin answer that question, that our expectations have just changed so much, where an 8-point loss in a back-to-back against the reigning, NBA champions, we were disappointed about that. There's no moral victories, of course, but that's a tough ask. That's a tough matchup. And I was glad with the toughness for sure.
So I got two answers, and obviously it's because, this is the one is the high expectation for Darius Garland moving forward. And the other is all right, he's kind of already there at this point. He just needs to iron out a little bit more to be concrete in this position. I'm going to go with the low to start. I'm going to start with Steve Nash. Steve Nash, not known for his scoring, not the best scorer at the point guard position, but still a great, passing guard, a great guy that can, get his assists when he wanted it back in the day.
MVP.
Yeah. And, what the team needed him to be was exactly what he was, a passer to sometimes score, which Garland has shown this year. He's also shown flashes of being a scorer to passer. That's where it's going to lead me into what Jeff was alluding to with Chris Paul, where Chris Paul's got a little bit better of a shooting game than Steve Nash ever did. And obviously he still passes at an efficient level and still scores at an efficient level, that if we get what we got for the last two games from Darius Garland, and it's going to take some, continuous progression for him. Obviously, Chris Paul didn't come in the league and, drop 20 points per game right off the bat, but his assists were still very good at an early age. And Garland's, playing at career levels right now. Obviously, all of his stats have improved from last year and the year before to now having what is his best season. So that's my hope for him, is that he can somehow develop. And if we can get, a 90% version of Chris Paul for a career long Darius Garland, I would be very happy with that.
And I'm assuming we're talking just offensively, right, guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to put that disclaimer in.
It's perfect timing because, as I alluded to, we have a special guest on the line. We want to start doing this. I know Justin and I want to start doing this with the Browns too. We should have been on this weeks ago with the way they're playing, but we're going to bring in a fan segment, good buddy of ours, someone who we went to high school with, another St. Edward High School alum, our buddy Bennett Sulen. And we're going to have this little fan section going on in the sense that we want an outside perspective, because Justin and I, we've been doing this for, almost a year. And we thought, the Cavs, it wasn't going to be stale if we didn't have another person, but Justin and I talk to each other about this stuff every week. So it's really helped bringing in Logan's perspective.
Yeah.
We don't want to get too big. We don't want to have, a show where we got 5, 6, 7 people every week. It gets a little bit out of hand, but we think 4 is manageable. Our buddy Bennett's on the line, a local basketball player for LCC, the Commodores, playing, hoops local. So someone who's around the game and someone who we trust his opinion about our Cleveland Cavaliers. What's going on, Bennett?
What's up, Big
What's up,
Ben?
boys? How you guys doing?
We're talking Darius Garland. The question before you entered was, who does Darius Garland remind you of? Justin said, if we get 90% of Chris Paul's career on the offensive side of the ball, that's a big win. Logan brought up Chauncey Billups. We want to hear your thoughts. We're putting you on the spot right away.
All right. I would definitely say he's like a hybrid between Chris Paul and Kyrie. Like, he has maybe not as good as a dribbling package as Kyrie, but he does have the smarts as a basketball player, and somebody that learning from someone like Rubio as a backup point guard and teaching him how to create while having the ball and dribbling around the offense is something that I like, that probably won't be as good as Chris Paul, because Chris Paul is one of the greatest of all time point guards. But,
right.
For somebody that's, probably going to give you 25 and 8 or 25 and 9 in Garland, maybe could get a double-double, definitely a little mix.
And I think we're going to keep it. I like that point, though. I think the Rubio signing has been underrated, especially with them being able to coexist on the court in some moments in time. But just what he's learned from Rubio, especially with the summer that Ricky had with the Spanish national team, I think it's been just the perfect storm for those two coming together. And this is where we're going to go. We're going to go around the horn, because it's something we haven't talked about, but it's something that we have to bring up, that we have to discuss eventually, with an unfortunate injury to Colin Sexton being out for the year. I don't even remember when his injury happened, but we probably played 10 or 12 games at least since then, maybe 15. So we wanted to bring Bennett in for a couple of things, talk about Darius Garland, and then talk about a potential trade idea that he has specifics for. But I'm going back to Bennett here. How do you feel about Darius Garland's growth since Colin Sexton has been off the court? And would he be growing at this rate? Would he be playing this well if Colin Sexton, never got injured?
No, definitely not. I think that he wouldn't have the usage rate on offense if you had another ball dominant point guard like Sexton in there. So I think just having Sexton go down is unfortunate, because it's 20 a game, it's 22 a game. You want that on your lineup, but especially right now, we're competing with every single team in the league. It doesn't matter what their rank is, whether it's Golden State, Phoenix, Milwaukee. We're in most of the games, which is what, that 20 points is big. But no, I think that since Sexton has gone out, Garland's been the primary ball handler at pretty much all times on the floor. He's had the ability to go pick and roll with either Mobley or Jarrett Allen to the basket, which he's so good at the floater that his floater now opens up an option for Allen when they're like, okay, we have to stop the floater. They commit 2 guys. He just throws it right at the rim. And Jarrett Allen and Mobley are going to dunk that. But that's not something that you see out of Sexton's game. Sexton is I'm going to score the basketball, which is fine. But Garland is more I'm a double threat, because I can either throw it, which is more lethal than them just knowing, okay, I'm going to throw up a floater or try and score the basket.
What's interesting, because I'm going to Justin here, but a little backstory is that last year, and the roster composition was totally different. It's tough apples and oranges, but Justin, I think I started to kind of show him a little bit of how Colin Sexton might have had empty numbers last year. Granted, our team was not as good as, talented as it is this year, but he would average, he put up 24, and then, he'd get 8 or 10 points in the fourth quarter when we're down 30. But I think that it was the biggest change this year is that Justin has seen is that if Garland's not scoring the ball very well, we're still in games where if that was the case last year, even when Sexton could put up 20 plus, we'd be getting blown out by teams who, weren't even as, they're not like the Milwaukee Bucks. They're not like the Phoenix Suns. They were just, everyday teams in the Eastern or Western Conference. So I'd like to hear what Justin has felt about that dynamic.
Yeah, it's just a completely different game when Colin Sexton's on the court, because even, you know, we've been watching the Isaac Okoro project as of late. And, you know, he's been the replacement for Colin Sexton at that 2 guard. It's, you know, obviously 2 very different games. People respect Sexton's scoring ability a little bit more, but the part of Sexton's scoring ability is still him holding the ball the majority of the possession. You see, I think right now, this is the most I've ever seen a team run actual plays, you know, each time coming down the court. And I think that's because of the ability for Garland to kind of navigate the open court and, you know, getting down to halfway. It's just, you know, we Jeff and I, you know, doing the Brown stuff, we see a lot of Twitter takes. Logan was alluding to the Twitter takes earlier. It's some of our favorite stuff, honestly. But, you know, we're missing Colin Sexton right now. And there are some games that we drop and you say, and you see some things about, if we had Colin Sexton, we'd win these games and whatnot. But in reality, you know, people go back to the Nets game last year where he dropped 30+ points and we won. Well, the Nets had just became, you know, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving and all that. So there's a lot to take into actual watching the game of basketball, watching these Cavs games. And you can see when Colin's out there, it's not the Ricky Rubio, Darius Garland effect where the ball movement is still very good. It's not really stagnant at any point, but you know, if Rubio starts off with the ball, it somehow gets to Garland at some point. But if it's Sexton, it's usually, you know, Sexton holds it for, you know, 20 of the 24 seconds that we have on the shot clock. And then maybe he passes out to what, you know, we haven't seen a lot of this year, which are bad shots. We've been taking a lot of great shots because of our ball movement. I just don't think with Colin Sexton out there, it's just as good.
Well, yeah, I think the backcourt tandem of Sexland kind of had to die for a little while so that way Tower City could come into its own.
True.
Sorry, my voice is leaving me right now, guys. But yeah, when you talk about just like, we talk about how the offense looks without Sexton. Does it look more organized? Maybe. Does it maybe look less scary when it comes to scoring the ball? Maybe that's also true. But I think because we have found where our strengths are, I think that more than anything, with the Sexton injury, it showed us where we want that ball. Who would have thought in 2021 we'd want the ball with our bigs underneath the basket?
Right.
You never could have guessed that. But when you have versatile bigs that can take the ball from 15 feet out, do a quick spin move, get to the paint on their own, have the mobility, have the stretch, have the length, have the touch, that ends up being a very effective offensive, mode. And then along with a guy like Darius Garland, who just knows how to run an offense very well, a guy like Ricky Rubio, who can even, put Okoro in the right spots at moments, get him the open looks, and pray to God he starts making them more consistently. It's really been an effective offense that we have found in the absence of Colin Sexton. That might not be Sexton's fault. I think he gets a lot of hate. I'm less of a Sexton hater than most people, even on this podcast.
Not lying.
But I really do believe we have learned more about ourselves without Sexton in how we could approach, the coming seasons here.
The Sexton timeline to me is just the most interesting part, just ever since we've had him, for example, because we've had these unsuccessful seasons. We've had some super suspect general management decisions, which that's a different episode, which we're going to get to that, because we are not letting people off the hook who have just, they're like Men in Black, their memories of the last 3 or 4 years of Kobe Altman has just been erased somehow because we're competent in his 4th or 5th season. We're not letting that off the hook. We're going to do a whole video, probably in depth, breaking that down. But let's just take Sexton last year. Averages 24 game. People think, oh, he got, if you really loved him, you thought he got snubbed from the All-Star game. If you were realistic, you knew that probably wasn't the case. Maybe if there was an injury, maybe. Then in the summer, it was, oh, he's gonna deserve this big contract. It's not super max big. And then you had the rumors come out about how his camp was asking for, upwards of 140 million. And then my favorite part of the Colin Sexton arc, and it's just unfortunate he got hurt, because I don't think you could actually say that this team is, even if we're marginally better with him, we would still, better, even if it's a little bit. I think we could still use the scoring. Everyone agrees on that. He could score the basketball. But him coming off the bench rumor that was floated before in the preseason, Everybody thought that that was the most heinous idea. And that was, you don't know basketball if you actually believe that. Well, through 25 games and since he's been hurt, I mean, if we rolled with this starting lineup and then you had Rubio and Sexton coming off the bench first and Love, and you had more of a Rubio and Sexton look on the court, and while Darius Garland rested instead of Rubio and Garland, where it's more, Rubio's ball dominant and Sexton is score dominant, I think that would look scary for a lot of teams to defend, their second units to defend us. Granted, there'd be an argument, Isaac Okoro scores 0 last night in the Bucks game, so you probably want to bring Okoro off the bench, but I don't know. I think that the sixth, him being a sixth man, everybody thought that was so disrespectful, but it looks a little bit, it looked like it could have been a possibility. And that might be the case moving forward if he stays with us. I wouldn't rule it out. But
I don't want to cut you off.
No, go ahead. I was done.
There was one other point to that whole Colin Sexton timeline that,
I missed something.
Me and you talked about it just a tiny bit. It wasn't a huge thing, but there was the Olympics this past summer.
Facts.
Colin Sexton was not chosen. However, Garland made it from the select team onto the active roster for the USA team, which, you were making the point about people thinking that, Colin Sexton got snubbed from the All-Star game.
Right.
It's one thing to drop, 24 points on a losing team and not really have too much of an impact on the game. Whereas apparently the scouts from the USA team thought, hey, Garland actually makes an impact in the way that he plays the game, that we should bring him along onto the team, the select team in the reserves. There were some injuries that happened and he actually got the bump onto the roster. So just thought I'd point that out there really quickly.
No, great point. And this is something that Bennett basically opened my eyes to last year, because I was so obsessed with how Colin played on the court. And he told me, you have to look at what Bennett was noticing, which I'll let him talk about. I'm not going to be too long-winded. You have to notice how other players in their position react to how Colin Sexton plays. And now even you could look at it through 25 games, how Garland plays this year. I never heard anybody last year say, Colin, I don't think a lot of the superstars around the NBA, not that they don't have respect for Sexton, but I think that, you saw Jimmy Butler kind of trolling him last year in some games. This is like, and granted, Darius Garland is playing the best basketball of his career, but like the last 7 games I've heard, Drew Holiday, I've heard Chris Paul, and I've heard Donovan Mitchell all say, Darius Garland is going to be a force to be reckoned with in this league, and giving him props in the last 7 games. So I just think it's a big respect factor. And that's something Bennett was trying to tell me about last year with Sexton.
Yeah, man. I just think that like the point you're alluding to is when they were playing against the Heat, getting like blown out in Miami, and Jimmy just walks up to Sexton and is like grabbing the back of his hair like his Jedi braid or whatever. He was like just fiddling with it. Like people don't respect him. And like when Harrison Barnes hit that turnaround jumper last year for the win against the Kings, literally just like slapped him right on the ass right in front of him. He was probably talking shit. He was probably talking like crazy to him before he's like, you're not hitting this. This is a Cavs dub. And then he just hits it right in his face. That's just something you kind of see, like I could see Sexton doing, but yeah, I don't know. I just think everybody really has a lot of like respect for who Garland is as a person too. Like Justin, that was a great point about the USA team and how all the coaches were raving about him. I'm pretty sure Pop said something too about how he was like an amazing point guard to have and somebody we're going to be going and seeing in the future.
Yeah, that's definitely, if Greg Popovich is giving you that type of praise, I mean, that's a good start. But man, a long Garland segment. I kind of like this though. I mean, I loved it. I feel like we've been going robotic though. We talk about every game and we got these live streams to break us up, but I want to get to Bennett's trade talk before we let him go, before we release him from the segment. But what are the specifics here? I think I know who it involves from our side, but I don't know. Oh no, I do know who it brings us back. And sorry, Justin, it's not Buddy Hield.
Oh, damn.
Okay, so Justin, I like that you like shooting guards because that's a hole we need right now. Isaac Okoro has, to be fair, not been playing very well recently. I think he could be like a Trevor Ariza 3-and-D guy, but he's still extremely young. Going to need a lot of time to develop.
Tony Allen.
Dude, yeah, just running around out there with like 0 everything. All right. So I think what we could do, and I don't know, I debate this every single day because I want to move Sexton because he's a very tradable piece right now, low contract, like 20
Mhm.
points a game. A team would take him. And the other player this involves for the Cavs is Kevin Love. And this is the part where I kind of start to get like, I don't know if I want to do this, because Kevin can actually stretch the floor. Like, the guy we'd be bringing in to replace Kevin Love cannot, but he's also a favorite. So the team I think we should trade Colin Sexton and Kevin Love to is Portland. If at the deadline the Blazers are like, we don't want Damian Lillard anymore, and I'm not saying we should take Damian, but we tell him, yo, we know you're going to start a rebuild period. Why don't we take CJ McCollum off of your hands, and we'll take Larry Nance Jr. back as well, and you guys can get Sexton, who you can give money to, and actually, like, he could get a contract from them. That's probably what he wants. That's fine for him. Loves playing in Portland. And then we get two guys that are from the area and actually like big Cleveland supporters. And, that'll draw a lot more attention to the team. A lot more people are probably going to go out and support them. They'll be fan favorites. Like, those are the people that you need, because right now Isaac Okoro cannot shoot the basketball. Like, I watched the game in person the other day, and they were literally just leaving him open in the corner. He was not making them. And that's somebody who, like CJ, that's a threat. You got to get out there and cover. That takes, every once in a while, CJ really can just go out or like one-on-one, which kind of gives it, okay, Garland's tired. He's had a couple shots in a row. Like, he just throws it to CJ. And now he does what like a Rubio would do, but have a way better scoring threat in terms of being able to shoot, like get to the basket off the pick and roll. And CJ's somebody who's not going to complain about his role either with the team. He's just going to come in here, probably be happy because it's Cleveland. It's a new start. So he's not like, oh, Damian's going to leave Portland because CJ can't, perform in the playoffs. It's less pressure on him. And then, again, Larry Nance can't space the floor like Kevin Love, which is tough because I do like Kevin's ability to shoot the three, but I just think CJ would be a really, really nice fit for the team. And I'd be willing to give up Sexton and Love.
I think Logan had the most visceral reaction to when you first started this. So I'm going to get my point out of the way really quickly before Logan gets it. There's actually a couple, but I believe Portland just fired their GM. Which, whoever they bring in there might be likely to make some hectic moves, which would be great if this was the case. My thing with the, what you were making a point about with Okoro, I think is phenomenal because, yes, like you were saying, they kind of just leave guys open. And the way our offense has been working with, Garland and Rubio trying to get our big guys the ball, when you have Okoro out there and they're just kind of leaving them open and clogging up the middle of the paint, it really hurts our offense very poorly. And that's why, getting a guy like McCollum who brings guys out onto him and really makes a threat, I think it's like why I was always going for like a Buddy Hield. Where like you need that kind of spacing to start out the game, and you could quickly bring in an Okoro back in from the bench. But I like that idea. I think it would be phenomenal if that could happen.
So yeah, this is what I'll say about your trade idea, Bennett. First of all, CJ McCollum has been rumored to go to Cleveland, I think, for years. Everyone kind of always comes up with their own version of a fancy trade. Honestly, I hadn't even thought about that trade, and I really think that would be really, really interesting for the Cavaliers. The problems I have with it is more on the Portland side. They could look at that trade and say, well, Colin Sexton just had a major injury. How can I trust he can still have the speed? Because at the end of the day, Sexton's speed is what makes him so dang effective on the court. Is the fact that he can get to any point on the court and make something happen. The other issue I have is Kevin Love still, I think, has 2 years on his deal. Is that correct?
Yeah.
$30+ million. So does Portland want to eat that? I guess they could afford to if they're going to a full rebuild, and then they move on and have all that money at their disposal. As far as bringing in two guys that love Cleveland, I'm all for it. As far as bringing in a guy who can get a bucket, CJ McCollum, I think at times looks like a top 5 shooting guard. Most of the time he kind of falls in that top 10 to 15 range, but there's times in games where he can just really take over and go on these spurts that are really, really interesting to watch. Yes, people are probably going to get mad in the comments because the Cavaliers are playing good basketball. It's like, why are we talking trades?
Right.
Well, the thing is to take that next step, because now we see how good this team can be. Yes, all you have right now, what you have on this team for the future is Garland, Mobley, Allen. Not to say everyone else is disposable, they're not. Rubio's only on a 1-year deal. Who knows where he wants to go after this? Lauri Markkanen is a young piece as well. You have Okoro if he finds his way around, another young guy. But how do you take that leap and really become a top 5 to top 2 seed in the Eastern Conference? Because right now, I don't think anyone's going to really get to Brooklyn for a while. And I think a move like Bennett just mentioned is certainly one that could put us, higher up there in the Eastern Conference standings. The only question I have is if Brooklyn is willing to make that move, if they're willing to embrace a full rebuild, if at the trade deadline this year, they're thinking we're screwed, then they'll go ahead and just blow it up. So, definitely a very interesting take that you brought to the table here today, Bennett.
Well, we don't bring people on who don't do their research. So per Sport Track, this does work. Believe it or not, Kevin Love is a necessity in this trade, I think, from Bennett's standpoint, because that's the only way it works with the cap. Because Kevin Love is making more money than CJ McCollum this year. So give Kobe Altman his flowers, though. That's all I've been hearing, because we're 13-12. A thing with Colin Sexton, though, and I like the trade. I think Portland, GM's gone. I think Dame, I think the Dame rumors are only heating up more about him not wanting to be there. So I don't think they see, 30-plus-year-old CJ McCollum as a part of their 5-year plan, where I think we could see him as part of our 2 to 3 year plan. And, his contract is a little hefty, but, Kevin Love would have to be the staple, like I was talking about. The interesting thing, before we let Bennett go, I just want to throw that out there. I sent this in the group chat like last week. There is the injury exception rule for the NBA, where a team, if we have a player who has a season-ending injury like Colin Sexton, we can actually sign a player for 50% of the disabled player's current salary. And I don't think it matters with the salary cap. So even if we're over, Colin Sexton's making $6 million this year. So which is a $3 million contract is not a lot for somebody, but we're not saying this to blow up the Cavs. We're not saying this to, that we're unhappy with how they played so far. They're playing great basketball. Everyone can see that.
Thrilled. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thrilled.
Yeah,
but we're not, the NBA is the league. Like, there's going to be teams tanking before the trade deadline. There always is. A lot of these teams, when the new year rolls around, it's basically game over for them. They're looking for the lottery. So if you're going to make a move in a professional sporting league to improve at the deadline, I think basketball, the NBA, is the best way to do it. Bennett, we really appreciate your insight. We appreciate you having, coming on, and we'll bring you back on in the future. So we love talking Cavs basketball with you. Any last thoughts before you log off?
I still wish we would have kept KPJ, because we would have to make a trade, but I'll leave it at that. I appreciate you guys having me
He's on a sad note.
I didn't get in my Darius Garland section, but is he an all-star? Yes or no?
2021 All-Star or 2022 All-Star game is in Cleveland.
Yep.
Yeah.
If the Cavs are like a 6 seed, I say they should get I don't know, because Rubio's playing good. So I would say Mobley and Allen too. I think Allen would be the first All-Star that we could get.
Yeah.
If we get a second one, yeah, I'd say maybe. Yeah, it depends.
I'll take a maybe. I'll take a maybe.
Maybe.
I think that's
I like it.
Answer.
I like it. But I appreciate you guys having me on. It was good talking to y'all. It was good seeing you guys.
Good seeing you, Ben. Good talk.
Ben, all the best, my friend.
Yep.
Thank you. See you guys later.
See you. Well. People are like, oh, are they done? No. We have 5 games this week. Well, we've already seen 2. So,
yeah.
But we have predictions to do before we log off.
Oh,
so
goodness.
Let's pull up the
we were very good with what our actual win-loss predictions were, not so much with actually picking the games.
Did we all say we were going to be 2-2 this last week?
We did.
I
We had
so.
very different results. Oh wait, Jeff, real quick before you jump in,
Go on.
I meant to mention it as Bennett was on, but I forgot to.
Mm-hmm.
Are we even allowed to get Larry Nance back? Isn't there a rule you have to wait a year until after you trade someone to get them back on your team?
I don't know. That probably sounds like a thing the
I don't know if
NBA
you
would
want to
do.
do some research in the middle of the podcast, but I thought that might have been a rule that you cannot bring someone back.
NBA 1-year trade rule?
Maybe something like that.
I don't know.
Maybe it used to be and not.
Oh, this has to do with the Bird contracts.
Okay.
But I think that has to do with, because I think we're technically still paying Delhi this year on a Bird contract.
Oh boy.
Because I think you could bring them in, but even if they go, it's like with head coaches, you have to pay them. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do some research. It's called Bird rights, which I've heard before, but I didn't know the term, and I didn't know about the exemption rule with injuries until a couple weeks ago.
Right.
So definitely some interesting things. I know we're still paying J.R. Smith $1.5 million for him to play golf. Yep.
And go to college.
So who's surprised that we not only do we have, we played the Jazz. So I think it was Sunday to Sunday they're talking about, because we played the Jazz, the Bucks, we play the Bulls tomorrow, we play the T-Wolves on Friday, and we play the Kings on Saturday. So Sunday to Saturday, 5 games. We're 0-2 already this week. Somehow it's not getting any easier because we're posting the 1 seed in the East tomorrow, the Bulls. We're going to try to go live after that game is the hopes. Bulls, T-Wolves, Kings. Yeah, so we have 3 more games this week.
And then we'll have the Heat before we come back on Monday.
Okay. Oh yeah. So we have 4 games. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. I'm thinking I'm going to start us off. I'm thinking 2-2. I'm going to go 2-2 again.
So safe pick.
I'm going 3-1.
I was going to go 3-1.
I'm going 3-1. I think we beat the Bulls tomorrow because the last time I thought we were going to lose at home, we won. So I'm going to switch that. I think we beat the Bulls. I think we lose the Timberwolves, which is weird because I didn't think we were going to lose the Timberwolves, like a week ago, but they're playing good basketball.
They are right now.
We're going to beat the Kings at home and we're going to beat Miami at home. They're not going to have Bam again. I don't know Jimmy's status, but them not having Bam is the biggest thing for me because our bigs are just going to beat them. Right. So 3-1, we're going to lose to the T-Wolves, beat the number 1 seed. People are going to be like, let's go. Wish that over me. Justin, 3-1 as well?
I'm going to have us go 3-1, but I'm going to have us lose to the Bulls. Honestly, I was going to have us win against the Bulls, but I want to be different from you. So I'm going to have us lose against the Bulls, and then I'm going to have us sweep the next 3, beat the Timberwolves, beat the Kings, and beat the Heat. I think the Timberwolves game will be interesting because that's going to be a game where we're going to have Okoro on Anthony Edwards and Garland on I can't think of his name. Point guard from Ohio State. Can't think of his name.
D'Angelo Russell.
Yes, thank you.
They're playing good basketball.
They are playing very good basketball. They're a good team in the West right now. They finally have figured it out a little bit. So it'll be a nice matchup against, what I think are 2 comparable teams. And then the Kings is just a team you need to get a win over. Hopefully, maybe in between that, if we're blowing them out, we're having a little side conversation about Buddy Hield coming over to the Cavs. And then I think we keep beating the Heat just because, them not having Bam is going to, mean work for Allen and Mobley down low.
Yeah, well, sports talk shows and podcasts are not fun if we all agree on everything, right?
Right.
And we do a lot of agreeing on this show.
Do.
We definitely do. This is so freaking hard.
Right.
Part of me wants to say 3-1. Part of me wants to say 2-2. This is the problem. The Bulls and the Timberwolves are 2 teams that are also young, much like the Cavaliers, and they have explosive players. I feel a big day coming from Anthony Edwards in that Cavaliers game. I feel an explosive performance coming overall from Minnesota. I don't know what tells me that, but it's sometimes kind of tough to win in Minnesota in years past with the Cavaliers too. I don't know what the deal is with that. We are at home against the Bulls. Barring an absolute showing right now. Well, actually, guys, isn't DeMar DeRozan hurt? Or he has health and safety protocols?
Yep. I forgot about that. That's why I said that.
See, we made the predictions last week without doing the Miami research. And we all predicted us to lose to Miami. They don't have Jimmy or Bam.
Yep. They don't have DeRozan, though. They won last night without him, though, I think.
Well, they still have Levine and
they're still
Lonzo,
good.
who's probably slotting in and playing well now.
They beat the Nuggets last night.
Still good. That team's there's a good Bull team. They're a good Bulls team.
Yep.
All right, guys, hold on. Coin flip.
You need 2 wins.
3-1. I'm gonna go 3-1 on the
Who are we
week.
losing to?
I got us losing to the Timberwolves. I don't know why. That feels so weird to say, but they really are playing a lot better basketball lately. Anthony Edwards has certainly come into his own. I could also see us losing to the Heat in a revenge kind of game where, they get Jimmy Butler back and he just settles everything down for them. And Duncan Robinson doesn't go over 7. Maybe he goes 6 for 7 and completely changes the game around. I'm going to go 3-1. I think that might be a little bit bold, but I think with this Cavaliers team, they've only been bold all year. So why not try to really get this season rolling? And, they're starting to play really good basketball in Cleveland. Let's see if they can bring it into the win-loss column instead of just these competitive losses that we've been seeing, as of late.
I think the consensus is 2 wins. If we only get 1 win this week, I think that'll be a disappointment. Yeah. Quick look at the Bulls. The Bulls box score last night. All 5 starters in double digits. 3 out of 5 starters with 20+. So Our defense is going to be, it's fun though. I like watching our defense play against good offenses. I think we saw that
Yeah.
last night. We did a good enough job to win, I think 112. I mean, that's still pretty good. Not good for our standards, but good enough in the NBA. A little bit of a longer one today, gents. We bring on we bring on our fourth, and we're going to keep doing that in the future, hopefully with some people that maybe we've never talked to, maybe we've never met before, but who are still Cavs fans. So I think that is all good for us. I think that that's pretty good wrapped up. Any other final thoughts? Anything on anyone's chest?
Nope.
Okay.
We didn't talk much about the Jazz game, but I'll say this much. If we can get that kind of effort every day from the Cavaliers, especially against a team like the Jazz, who was literally making everything from the outside,
Yes.
Yeah.
some things that are just out of your control. If we can if we can control the things we can control, that's when this team is very effective. Anything outside of that, if that's the reason they're losing, you kind of hold your head high on that. So a lot of good things that I like from these last 4 games. Hopefully they carry into the next 4, and hopefully next week we're not just one game above 500. Let's try to get 2 games and really start setting the pace in the Eastern Conference.
Absolutely great point. I think that we've just loved the style of basketball. There's not a whole lot to complain about besides our schedule being an absolute nightmare through the first, it might be the whole season like this. The East really just might be that good the whole year, but we're up for the task, and we are here to help you guys, guide you through it, walk through it with some of our fans, with people that watch the show. We're glad that you're here. We're glad you're in the comments too. Drop us, some thoughts down below. Really make sure that you roast us if you totally, hate us trying to trade away some of our players when we're playing so good, but something that we got to look at. Make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit that like button and smack that notification bell so when we're going live, when we've uploaded a video. And with that being said, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.